Denne uken er Gene Sharp i Oslo for å promotere sin dokumentarfilm How to Start a Revolution. Filmen vises på Human Rights Human Wrong dokumentarfilmfestival tirsdag klokken 18 på Vika kino.
Nice to meet you.
Vi møtte Sharp på Rika hotell søndag.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Gene Sharp. And I hope you have a pleasant time here in Norway.
Takk for det.
I understand you have previously worked here in Norway during the 50s and the 60s.
Yes.
We can start off, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes, I was brought to Norway from where I was a journalist in London, and Professor Arne Næss in philosophy invited me over for 2 one-month periods, and then arranged for me to come back full-time with Erik Grinde of the Institute for Samfunnsforskning. And I was here then for about 2.5 years or more, and then I returned later after 4 years in Oxford. I was back at the University of Oslo in philosophy again for a bit over a year.
During that period you were working with Arne Næss?
I worked with Arne Næss somewhat, but I was mostly doing my own work, but he was very supportive of what I was doing.
Well, while you were in Norway, there was an incident with some teachers. Can you tell a little bit about
Yes, my first month in Norway, I was given a place to live at the home of Mari and Herman Ruge, Mari Holmboe Ruge, and it was her father, Håkon Holmboe, and his wife, Lotta, that had been very important in the teachers' resistance back during the Quisling regime. So I did a major interview with Håkon Holmboe that was then published in a booklet at Peace News called Tyranny Could Not Quell Them. And I think that has been translated and published in Nynorsk some years ago.
Yeah. While you were here in Oslo and you did your work, it became some sort of a basis for your later work on where you're writing on the non-violent revolution.
That's correct. My big book is not From Dictatorship to Democracy. That's a small piece of what I've been doing. My big book was published back in 1973 called The Politics of Nonviolent Action. And it was a huge book in one volume of about 800 and 900 pages. There are 3 major parts of the work that began here at the Institute for Social Research. A list of specific methods, specific forms of action that could be used in protest and in resistance, which is much more than protest. I had a first list of, I think, 18 methods that had been actually used, and I might have had some examples published in maybe 12 pages stenciled. That became about 270 or 80 pages in my big book that was completed eventually when I was at Harvard. The second way Norway was, and that was really basic. That's what became the basis of what they now regard as famous list of 198 methods.
Yes.
I was also asked to give a lecture at the Institute for Samfunnsforskning on the dynamics. How does this work, if it does, in a conflict with an opponent that may be very brutal, very repressive? And that lecture then has developed and filled out as another major part of the Politics of Nonviolent Action. Became a volume of 350 or 70 pages there. And so a third way the work began here, which was very important. I was told accurately that I didn't know much about political power, and I believed him. So I arranged to go to Oxford and study political theory for 4 years, where I not only studied political theory, but also dictatorships and revolutions. And that theory of power analysis, however, became very fundamental in examining how nonviolent struggle really works, because all governments, including dictatorships, have weaknesses. They all have a need for certain sources of power. If you can identify what are those sources and know that they are all connected with obedience and cooperation of individuals and of institutions, then you can just, like you turn off water in the sink, it's too much water coming out. You don't try to push it up. You try to turn the switch to cut off the water. You can do that with sources of power of dictatorships also.
Do you feel like your work, since it's been like these days, it's been used in Egypt?
So I've been told.
Yeah, during the revolution there, and it's also in your newest film about you. You're a
Yes.
subject on the film called Gene Sharp: How to Start a Revolution.
Yeah, Roy Ayers' film.
Can you tell me a little bit about the film?
Well, you should speak to Rory about that.
Mm.
It does describe my work. It shows me walking on the streets of East Boston. It shows our office and how crowded it is, how messy my desk is with all kinds of papers. But and he also very importantly shows places where we know or pretty well know that my work had had some influence, and with interviews of the people who participated in those cases.
But did you foresee it when you wrote it back when you wrote your work, that these writings of you would make such an impact on people in the future?
Oh no, I couldn't imagine something like that. I always hoped that it would. We had a little clue once when I took one of that 18 or 12 page manuscripts on methods. I took it to a conference in Accra, Ghana one time, and the South African delegates and the delegates from another part of Africa all reported they had stayed up all night reading it. And that was a very simple list, and I thought, my goodness, there's really an interest, there's really a hunger. So I was always hoping it would be useful.